Today I want to talk about the post-hardcore band Emarosa and their decline into post-hardcore's deepest pits of hell. Of course, I only say declined as my own personal opinion. It's still perfectly reasonable to like the music they put out, but to me personally, they definitely fell off. So what happened to Emarosa? At one point, they were considered one of the best bands of the genre. How does a band so big end up as disappointing as they are now? That's what I'll be taking a look at today. Emarosa was formed in 2006 in Lexington, Kentucky, first as Corsets Are Cages. They fumbled around for a little while until forming into a solid lineup consisting of these guys, and then changing their name to Emarosa. They were signed to Standby Records and released their first EP, This Is Your Way Out, in mid-2007. This EP was easily the heaviest release in the entire band's discography. It had huge metalcore influences. This Is Your Way Out was comparable to something like Catherine or Here I Come Falling. Videos on them coming soon. Or if you want a bit more of a modern comparison, I would say it's a lot like Kingdom of Giants. Vocally, it was mainly screams. Chris Roetter, the vocalist, did a fantastic job on here. I mean, Chris's screams here are ferocious, like scary even, give me nightmares, pee my pants, like horrifying. And the chunky ass guitars that fill your entire eardrums. And whenever they're not whacking the fuck out of those zeros, the guitars are really screechy and dissonant. It's like you can literally hear the guitar wailing out in utter agony. And then there's the drums that seem to just slap you in the face. It is a wild set of songs. It's like being completely ran over by a truck. This EP was a fast-paced attack. They came out of the gate swinging on this one. A cervical fracture patient's worst nightmare. It's a great listen, and I highly recommend it. It's my personal favorite release from the band. Shortly after the release of the EP, Chris Roetter sadly leaves the band. The band seemed to want to move in a different, less break your neck and become quadriplegic direction. In an interview, they said that the next album would have a lot less screaming on it. This highlights a key detail in understanding how the band lost the following they once had. They were a band that was constantly evolving, which in itself is not a bad thing. But when between your releases you go through massive tonal changes, it tends to alienate the fan base, which Emarosa will be no stranger to doing, but more on that later. Now, since Chris left for the new vocalist, who did they decide to bring in? None other than Jonny goddamn Craig. Fresh out of Dance Gavin Dance and ready to be kicked out of a new band, Craig steps in to fill in the shoes of Chris Roetter. In 2008, demos for new songs were floating around the internet, creating hype for new Emarosa. And on July 8th of that year, Emarosa's first full-length album, Relativity, came out. And boom, Relativity goes crazy. Everybody loves it. Oh my god, oh man. Fans and critics alike love it. It's one of the bigger albums of the year for post-hardcore. They were not kidding about lowering those screams either. Relativity has hardly any. And to replace those icky screams, Jonny Craig's voice takes front and center. His booming, soulful singing just imposes on the entire album. Jonny Craig is fantastic here. The guitars are really toned back too. In lieu of crazy chunk monsters, they have this more technical style of playing, which isn't bad to listen to. It fits with Craig's vocals much more than the previous guitars really would have. And this album just slaps you in the face from the very beginning. The Past Should Stay Dead is one of the best opening songs I've ever heard. They throw everything they have at you from the very beginning. No bullshit, no slow-paced intro. They just fly things at you at turbo speed. This album just has so much soul, so much life. It's just got it going on. Another great one for Emarosa. They're 2 for 2 now. They had a really strong start to their life. And what do they do to follow up such a great album? They fucking do it again, that's what. And on June 29, 2010, they released their next album, Emarosa, or self-titled. And boom, self-titled goes crazy, everyone loves it. This is just like that other one. Jonny Craig was still leading the charge on this one, doing Jonny Craig things like vocal gymnastics and singing the blues and rampant drugs. They went for a more folky tone on this one, once again stepping back from what people would really expect from the genre. But the album was still received well. The instrumentals were a lot less aggressive, same with Jonny's voice. The whole album is a lot more toned back than the previous. A solid album for sure, nothing to sneeze at, but In my opinion, I'd say Relativity did it better. People were eating these albums up. They loved them. Jonny Craig was absolutely shining. Jonny Craig shot this band into relevance and kept them there for many years, but in classic Jonny fashion, it just couldn't ever last. Soon after self-titled release, Jonny Craig rejoined Dance Gavin Dance, putting his relationship with Emarosa in limbo. Around this time, he also ended up checking himself in a detox for his lifelong struggle with drugs. And good on you for that, Jonny Craig. But to the dismay of the fans, on April 11th, Jonny Craig was kicked out of Emarosa, thus ending what I consider the golden age of Emarosa. They ended up settling on Bradley Walden to come in to replace Jonny Craig. And on September 9th, 2014, they released their newest product, Versus. Instead of the roaring applause from the previous works, Versus was met with mixed reviews from fans. Most didn't hate it per se, but it definitely wasn't the same quality as their previous albums. Yo, Editing Pete here. I made it seem like every single person who listened to Versus thought it was just meh at best, but no, that's not the case. People actually really did love this album, but not nearly as many as the other two, and it was a lot more divisive, I should say. I kind of worded that wrong, and I kind of wanted to clarify. So yeah. The first thing you notice with Versus is how somehow they managed to pull back the aggression even more. For the fourth release in a row, they decided to tone it down again. The instrumentals now entirely lack even a whiff of the force they used to have, and Bradley Walden had a noticeable lack of punch. He wasn't bad, but I don't think he was what fans wanted. The old Emarosa fans were just expecting a product that they didn't get, and new listeners were just underwhelmed by alright vocals and bland instrumentals, mixed with the fact that there was almost nothing here for listeners of post-hardcore to latch onto. So there was just not a lot for new or old listeners to really enjoy here. For example, let's go back to their first release, This Is Your Way Out, and compare it to Versus. This is the same fucking band. Or if you'd rather use an example from the Jonny Craig era, listen to this. Those are screams! It must have been just such a letdown for the fans who had come to expect a certain sound from this band to just have nothing delivered on this project. Now obviously you don't listen to Emarosa for the heaviest music you've ever heard, at least not since This Is Your Way Out. But you do expect some sort of crunch, something to contrast from the singing, something to add that kick or that flair. I believe that's post-hardcore's biggest strength, the ability for songs to just stop on a dime and have a complete tonal shift and sound great. To have that yin and yang, that beauty mixed with ferocity. For example, take the band Dance Gavin Dance. Just like Emarosa, they became increasingly less aggressive and less heavy as the years went on. But as they evolved, they didn't give up that edge, they refined it. And now, 10 albums later, they're still improving and one of the best bands in the genre. But Emarosa just entirely let go of that side of the music. And as the vigor left the music, the fans left too. After Versus, Emarosa released 131 on January 19th, 2016. I won't be spending too much time on this one, my thoughts are very similar to Versus. But as is tradition for this band, they changed their sound once again, going for a more poppy sound. After 131, Bradley Walden would go on Twitter and make one of the most infamous tweets in post-hardcore history, and officially confirm what Emarosa fans had been dreading for years. He tweeted, "Post-hardcore Emarosa is dead." It was like he took this tweet from page 1 of how to alienate your fan base. And he wasn't lying. On February 8th, 2019, they put out their 5th studio album, Peach Club. They were now a full-blown pop band. They got the Bring Me the Horizon treatment. I can't really give this one a proper and fair review because this genre as a whole just isn't really my thing. So even if this was the greatest electro-pop album ever, which I kind of doubt, I wouldn't really know. So I'm not going to try to critique something I just simply don't care about and don't have the know-how to do. But I will say that if you've changed your sound so much to the point that your fans don't even care about your music anymore, you did something wrong. In the summer of 2020, Emarosa was dropped by their label due to sexual misconduct allegations against the vocalist Bradley Walden. Now, Wikipedia and strangers on the internet have told me that these allegations were proven false, but I have not done enough research to come to a definitive conclusion, so all I'll say is that there were allegations, whether true or false, against Bradley Walden. And after the allegations came out, whether true or false, many of the fans that they still had left decided that this was now the time to cut ties with Emarosa. As of right now, Emarosa is in the process of marketing a new album called Sting. They've released a few singles that sound really similar to Peach Club, so again, not really my thing. The band is now only a duo, consisting of Bradley Walden and E.R. White. And as it stands now, Emarosa will go down as one of the biggest has-beens post-hardcore has ever seen. A sad story for the fans of such a dynamic band. But what were the reasons that fans really stopped caring? I'm not going to spend too long on reason one because I've already covered it a bunch of times throughout the video, but it's the complete tonal shift that they went through. Evolution in a band is to be expected, but Emarosa did it in a manner where it was really hard for the fans to stick around because what they wanted to hear, they just weren't hearing anymore, and it left a really bad taste in the listener's mouth. Reason 2 has to be the departure of Jonny Craig. This one isn't really Emarosa's fault, just more of an unfortunate situation. Jonny Craig was the one who breathed life into this band. He brought them to the fucking promised land. I understand if Jonny isn't your personal favorite vocalist this band had, but it is impossible to deny that they had their most success while he was there. Most people were listening to Emarosa for Jonny Craig. His voice commands such a big audience that people will listen to the bands he's in just for him. It's the same thing that happened to Slaves. While he was there, people loved him, but the second he was gone, nobody cared anymore. Can I just say, awful band name, by the way. Slaves? Like, imagine trying to wear some of their merch, and you're just walking around the streets with a shirt that has a big-ass, like, slaves right here. Like, that's not sending a good message. But back to Jonny. Jonny Craig will always be a very tough act to follow, and Bradley Walden, sad enough, was destined to fail from the beginning. He just does not have what Jonny has. And I am positive a lot of the fans abandoned ship the second Jonny was gone. I mean, look at this. Some people don't even know that Emarosa still makes music. Reason 3 is fan alienation. Whenever a band changes their sound album by album, whether that be by a change in vocalist, or a difference in instrumentals, or just by sheer evolution, it creates a sort of disconnect between fans. Some who liked the previous sound and wish they would stay with that, and others who like the new sound and are glad that they switched. And with Emarosa, every single album was creating that disconnect. So you had Jonny Craig fans in one corner fighting against the pre-pop Bradley Walden fans in the other, and then they're arguing with the Chris Roetter fans over here, and then the post-pop Bradley Walden fans in the other side. It was a mess, a huge mess. It didn't feel like one band's fan base arguing amongst each other. It felt like 4 completely separate bands' fan bases all attacking each other. And reason 4 is a short one. It's just disrespect to the fans. Bradley Walden was handed a band with already pre-existing fans, and he did not respect them at all. Whether it be the infamous post-hardcore Emarosa is dead, or him calling the fans idiots for not liking the new sound, Bradley Walden just seemed to hold some sort of animosity towards the people who were supposed to be his supporters. And all of those reasons just led to Emarosa falling off a cliff in terms of quality and fan base. And that is how to decline into obscurity, featuring Emarosa. Anyone who watched this long is rad as fuck. I have no idea how long this video is going to turn out. Probably like 20 minutes. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it greatly. If you want more music talking videos, I got a whole playlist of those motherfuckers. It's a little small right now, but you know, give it some time. It'll get bigger. And make sure to subscribe because every new subscriber is another electro pop band burned to the ground. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Later, guys. Oh my god, my back hurts.